Doing that. We are in the middle of our series of messages called the Jesus Project People. The Jesus Project People is our attempt over the course of this year to look at all the things, all the one another statements inside the New Testament. The times that the writers of the New Testament tell us, here's how you should treat one another. And then ask ourselves in the process if maybe we're getting some of that wrong. And the answer is yes. We're getting some of this wrong. But the letters are written because these churches, these first century Christians who are trying to live out the gospel message of who Jesus was and what Jesus had called them to do and to be in his kingdom in the world. And they found that it was not easy all the time. That not just our relationship with God wasn't easy, but that our relationship with other people was a little bit more complicated. And sometimes Paul and other writers had to come along and say, hey, you're missing this a little bit. So let's get back to where we need to be. Let's kind of focus our hearts and our attention in this direction. And so that's what this series is about, really, is essentially us listening to the New Testament writers say, hey, let's kind of focus in, let's kind of refocus our hearts and our attention here. And this morning we're going to talk about this idea of strengthening and encouraging one another. I look back, it was about almost 14 and a half years ago. My dad passed away. It was a Saturday. I got the call while we were doing a church work day out here, like raking leaves and stuff. And I got the call that my dad he'd had a surgery the day before. And then my sister called me to say, hey, something happened overnight and you got to come up because Dad's not going to make it. And so I drove to Connecticut and kind of if you've ever done something like that, it's like a weird sort of in-between space. Like you want to get there, but you kind of don't want to get there, and going through all of that. And so my dad passed that Saturday evening, and I was sort of struggling with what should I do about Sunday, because I kind of work on Sunday. And so there was a part of me that was like, I'd like to just take the day off, and I'd like to just kind of to be here. Then there was another part of me that was like, I'd like to be in church with my people at church. And so I just spent some time thinking about what I wanted to do and what I felt like was the right thing for me to do in my heart. And I decided that we were going to come back on Saturday night and I was going to come and preach on Sunday. One of the reasons was the message when I was in the middle of a series of messages on leadership, and it was the last message in the series. I still remember, I don't remember a lot of messages that I preached, but I remembered this one. It was about the idea that leadership leaves a legacy into another generation. And I thought, well, like if I could honor my dad any way, it would be to stand up and to preach that message. And I looked back at my notes when I was preparing for this message, and I saw this one line that I had written that probably showed up on the screen at some point. It said, leaders measure their impact in generations. Leaders measure their impact in generations. My dad left an impact on my life that has hopefully left an impact on the lives of my kids, and now another generation, grandkids coming after. It felt like a fitting way to sort of honor my dad's legacy to be preaching that message on that Sunday. But it was also, there was another reason that I made the decision to go to church on that Sunday. And it was simply this, because I had spent years as a pastor telling people a statement like this: when you are hurting, run towards the church, not away from it. When you are hurting, run towards the church, not away from it. And I remember having a conscious thought that what I would do if I showed up on Sunday in the middle of time when I was hurting, when I wasn't going to be able to keep myself together, when I was going to break down and I was going to cry and I was going to be a mess, I remember thinking that this is what we're supposed to do. When we hurt, rather than run from the church, we should run to it. Rather than run away from people that God has placed around us, we should run back to them and we should ask them to help us. And listen, I'm not a person who likes to ask for help. In fact, I'm probably worse than most of you at asking for help. And so I don't love being in a position where I have to say, well, I'm vulnerable, I'm hurting, I'm weak, I'm suffering, I don't feel it today, but I need other people around me to sort of strengthen me and pour back into me. Too many people, when we are hurting, we look at our hurt, our suffering, and we decide that that's the moment, and I have seen it way too many times in church world, right? Which is that when people are hurting, instead of running to us and letting us help and strengthen, they run away. And sometimes they run far enough away that you don't ever see them again. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to model this truth. When you are hurting, you run to people, not away from them. I wanted to let them, and I remember doing it, let them pray for me and let them kind of carry me on that day when I didn't feel strong enough to do the things that I needed to do as a person in that day. There are moments in life, and I think this is what you understand and I understand. There are moments in life for all of us when we need to borrow strength from someone else. Every single person who's sitting in this room has been through, maybe is in the middle of, if not, will be at some point in the future, in a moment in your life when you do not have the strength to work your way through the struggle, the challenge, the thing that is right in front of you. And when you feel that, there is going to be this piece of you that's going to want to run and hide. There's going to be a part of you that's like, I don't want people to see my weakness. I don't want people to see and know the suffering. I don't want people to understand the pain that I'm going through, the struggle, the thing that I can't seem to overcome in my life. I would like to run away from people. And when we feel weak, we sometimes just want to hide our weakness. And what Jesus, I think, asks us to do inside of a community like this is let's not hide our weakness from each other. Let's not run away from each other and pretend that we're strong enough to deal with these things on our own. Because at some point or another, it's too much for you. It's too much for me. And so what we do is we show up and we let others help us be strong when we don't feel strong. Some do that very well, and others do not do that so well. But this is what the church is supposed to be. It is supposed to be a place where you borrow strength from your fellow believers. You borrow faith. You borrow courage. You borrow endurance from one another in these moments so that you can work through the things that you have to work through. And then here's the other side of it, is that there are moments when you have all of the strength that you need to deal with your life. And there will be someone sitting next to you, across from you, all the way around the room from you, that doesn't have the strength that you have. And you will have the opportunity to sit next to them and offer to lend them your strength. And that is the way the church is designed to operate. Paul writes this letter, 2 Corinthians, it's the second letter to the Corinthians. I know I've been saying like very obvious things lately to you. So 1 Corinthians is the first letter that Paul wrote to the Corinthians. What we assume is that after Paul wrote the letter to the 1 Corinthians, to the Corinthians, the Corinthians wrote him back a letter. That's the way he seems to interact with some of their language around things that they may have said in a letter back to him. And so Paul feels the need to say, well, I'm going to follow up with you, and I'm going to send you a second letter, and I'm going to kind of remind you of some other things, and we're going to interact about these things. And at the beginning of 2 Corinthians, in chapter 1, there's this intense concentration of Paul talking about suffering, Paul talking about affliction, Paul talking about this inability at times that we have to sort of get through these moments in our lives. And then the other side of it, which is that when we feel those things, that God actually shows up and is present with us and provides comfort to us in the middle of our strength. Here's how it goes in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3. And I've sort of highlighted it so that you can see how many times he says comfort and affliction and suffering in these 5 verses. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort. That's such a beautiful description of our God. The God of all comfort, who comforts us in our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction themselves with the comfort by which we ourselves are comforted by God. Now you're like, okay, Paul, we get it. Right? But he continues. For as we share abundantly in Christ's sufferings, so through Christ we share abundantly in comfort too. If we are afflicted, it is for your comfort and salvation. And if we are comforted, it's also for your comfort, which you experience when you patiently endure the same suffering that we suffer. Our hope for you is unshaken, for we know that as you share in our sufferings, you will also share in our comfort. If you are counting, which you may not have been, it's 10 times in 5 verses Paul uses the word comfort. So anytime that happens, you see a real intense concentration of a word or a phrase or set of words and phrases, we should pay attention to that. We should kind of fill out, like, why is Paul writing to them about this? It's like one of these moments where he gets an idea and he won't let go. And he says, I want you to understand that our God is the God who is all comfort and all encouragement and all strength for you. I want you to understand that your God, the God that you are in relationship with, is a God who shows up in the middle of your suffering, your affliction, your hardship, your difficult moments in your life, and does not let you go. Because if there's something that we understand about life in this world, right, it's that we will all experience suffering. We will all experience affliction. We will all experience moments when we feel overwhelmed by grief, sorrow, sadness, or the experience of life inside of this world. And what Paul is saying is, I want to remind you that your God is the source of all your comfort and all of your strength in the middle of this world, which so often throws us for so many loops. So many unexpected moments. So many things that you didn't see coming, and when it came, you were caught off guard by it and something happened inside of you. And you felt broken. You felt like you couldn't endure. You couldn't walk through it. It felt like too much for you. Paul uses it to describe his own experience here. His experience. Paul the apostle, Paul the one used by God to start all of these churches, Paul the writer of so much of the New Testament, Paul this great man of faith and power and strength, what he says is, we experience suffering. We experience affliction. So when you hear some preacher on TV tell you that if you believe in Jesus, you're never going to suffer again, you can say, I got a pretty good idea that you're wrong about that. Because I have it on relatively good authority from the Apostle Paul, who wrote much of the New Testament, that we are going to suffer. We are going to experience affliction. 10 times he says you're comforted. 7 times in the same 5 verses he talks about his affliction and his suffering. And what you understand, what we recognize, right, is we don't need comforting if we're not suffering, right? We need comforting when we are going through it. We need comforting when it feels like it is too much for us. So what Paul is saying is, I'm experiencing suffering and I'm also experiencing comfort in the middle of my suffering. This is the reality of life, right? For so many of us, at so many different moments in our lives, Paul is saying, God is present with me even when I suffer. That's a different kind of theology. Because again, some people will tell you when you suffer because God is absent from you. You're suffering, all these bad things are happening to you because God left you, or more precisely, they would probably tell you, you left God. You did something wrong, right? You've heard somebody tell you that. Someone has said that to someone that you love or someone that you care about. The reason that you are suffering is because you're not following Jesus well enough. The reason that you're suffering, the reason you're afflicted, is because you don't pray enough. You still have that condition because you haven't prayed hard enough. Anybody ever told you that? Yeah? Okay, yeah. You went through this because you didn't pray, you didn't believe, you didn't trust God enough. It's nonsense. Paul says, look, here's the thing. We experience suffering and we experience comfort in the middle of our suffering. It is not that God removes all suffering from our lives. I wish that was the case, but that is not the gospel. The gospel does not say, follow Jesus and never suffer again. The gospel says, follow Jesus and experience comfort even in the midst of your most difficult moments in your life. And even as we share in each other's sufferings, Paul says, then we also get to share in comforting one another. It's one of these places where sometimes English words don't, if we just skip over them and we don't necessarily think about them. But I want you to think about the word comfort. Because when we hear comfort, what we hear is kind of soft. But literally, it comes from two Latin words that mean together, come, C-O-M, bring together, and fortis means strength. It means together we experience strength. It means that something happens when the people of God sit together in the middle of their suffering and in the middle of their affliction and in the middle of their uncertainty and their fear and their doubt about the world in which they live. Something happens when we sit next to each other and we receive strength from the other person sitting next to us. Comfort for us, usually we think about, means the elimination of our sadness and our sorrow. It means if I'm comforted, it means I don't feel sad any longer. It means I forgot about pain. I forgot about thing that I was going through. I was distracted, usually is what we mean by it. So when we read this word and we read about Paul saying God is going to comfort us in the middle of our suffering, we usually read that to mean, okay, God will comfort me by bringing me out of my suffering or taking my suffering away from me. That's what we mean. We want this to essentially be a way for us to say, God will come alongside and make you feel better. And that's not the word. That's not what happens. It's not that God pats us on the back and says, it'll be okay. It's not that God pats us on the back and says, well, just a little while longer and I'm going to take this suffering away from you. Just a little while, just be patient and I'll remove the affliction from you. In fact, what we find in Paul's experience is that he begged God to take some of the afflictions away from him, and God said to him exactly this: I'm not taking it. I'm not. You're going to live with it. And here's what you're going to live with: the reality that my strength is made perfect in your weakness. Comfort is not a soft, feel-good kind of word. Comfort does not remove suffering. It strengthens us to endure it. And this is such an important, critical kind of definition for us as we think about what does it mean for us to be comforted by God and then to comfort one another. It is not your responsibility as a person, a fellow believer inside of a church community, to go sit next to someone who's suffering or feeling afflicted and remove the suffering from them. You can't do that. Right? I mean, we should know that. If you don't know that, let me help you. You can't do that. You can't eliminate someone's pain. You can't eliminate someone's suffering. You can't take them out of the thing that has put them in that place. It's not on you to do that. What it is on you to do is to go sit next to the person who is suffering and say, I can't help you get out of this, but I can help you work through this. I can sit with you and you can borrow my strength to deal with the thing that you are dealing with, to endure and to face the thing that you are dealing with every single day of your life. If you don't feel strong enough, you just borrow some strength from me, and I will be here as long as you need me to be here. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. Because this is the way that God has designed the community of the people of God to work, to come next to each other, sit together, and say, you and I can experience strength from one another. Because that's God's design. Here's what he says in 2 Corinthians chapter 13, and this is the one another piece. Finally, brothers, rejoice, aim for restoration, and comfort one another. Agree with one another. Live in peace, and the God of love and peace and comfort, strength and encouragement, that God will be with you. This is one of those places, again, I'm nerding out for a minute, but that's okay. You put up with me. The one another isn't actually in the Greek text here. It's sort of implied. And essentially what Paul is saying is, I want you to be a place that is comforting to itself. I want you to be a place that is marked by, together we are strong. I want you to be a place that when people look at you and look at your community and they experience what it's like to be part of New Life, and they experience what it's like to be a part of this group of people, I want you to be a place that doesn't go around taking sorrow from one another, and it doesn't go around making each other feel better. I want you to be a place where God gives His strength to the people sitting next to you through you. That's what I want. I want you to be a place that when someone is hurting and when someone is suffering and when someone is afflicted, when they come and they sit next to you, they feel stronger by your faith, by your strength, by what's inside of you that may not feel like it's inside of them in that moment. I want you to be a place where people know they are not alone in their suffering. The world isolates people in their suffering. When people are hurting, we get this, I don't know what to do. And so we sort of step back. We're like, okay, well, okay. I don't know what to do. The church is supposed to be the people who sit next to, run to, not from, those who are suffering. A place where God gives His strength to the people sitting next to us. The gospel makes us the kind of people who come alongside one another and then share our strength with each other. And it is the strength to endure the hardship and to not give up and to not give in that we need. We do not need someone to come along and tell us that the suffering's going to go away. That's not what we need. If you've ever been in the middle of it, you know that that's not what you need. You don't need false hope. You don't need a false sense of security. You don't need a false sense of optimism. You don't need any of that. You need someone who will sit with you in the middle of the thing that you are experiencing and say, I don't have answers for you, but I know that our God is the God of all comfort, the God of all strength, and the God of all encouragement. And so I will sit with you until you can feel that for yourself. The church is a place we experience shared strength to endure. Because on our own, we are more likely to give up and to give in to discouragement, aren't we? I know this about me, and you know this about you. Isolated from other people, trying to bear all of the burden by yourself, is the most vulnerable place for you to be. It's a dangerous place for you to be when you feel alone. And one of the ways that we know that God is present with us in our suffering is when another person comes to us and says, hey, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you're going through. I don't need to know all the details. I don't need to know the whole story. I don't need to know any of that. I just need you to know that I'm here. And then I'll walk with you. And if you need to share something with me, you share it with me. And if you need to not share it with me, you don't. That's okay. But I just want you to know I'm praying for you. And I'm not just saying I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. I'm here to listen. I'm here to walk with. I'm here to strengthen. And I'm here to encourage. The church, as the people of God, cannot remove hurt and pain from any of its members. We cannot do that. You can't pray it away. You can't preach it away. You can't sing it away. But what we can do is we can stand next to each other and we can pray and we can preach to and we can sing with and we can pour strength back into our brothers and sisters when they need it the most. And when we do that, here's what we're doing. We are helping that person stay connected to the God of all comfort, who is the one who comes alongside them and strengthens them to endure the thing that they are facing. That is what we can do. This kind of comfort, this is the place that is supposed to happen inside these walls, inside this community of people. And here's the last thing I'm going to say about it. Comfort is mutual. We must give it and we must receive it. It is not that some are always strong and others are always weak. And the strong give strength to the weak, and the weak receive the strength from the strong. The way that God has designed the church is that every one of us is going to be strong at certain moments and weak at others. And here's what you will do if you are the sort of person, I can say this because I'm one of them. If you are the prideful sort of person who only likes to be the one on the helping side. Don't raise your hand, but somebody who's close enough to you knows that you are that person. If you are the person who always needs to give strength to other people and never wants to receive strength from anyone else, you rob the church of doing and being who the church is called to be. You say, well, I got this. I don't. And what you do, and what I've done at times and moments in my life, what all of us have probably done to some extent or another, is we distance ourselves when we need to be close. The time when we are hurting the most, we isolate ourselves. And we rob the other people in our church and community of the opportunity to comfort us and to sit with us and to strengthen us. For them to see that even the person who looks like he or she always has it together doesn't always have it together. Sometimes you've got to be the person receiving strength, and sometimes you've got to be the person giving strength. Sometimes you've got to be the person who says, I feel good. I feel alive. My life is everything that I want. Like, I'm in a moment where it just feels like I recognize the goodness of God in my life. And I've got an overflowing amount of it. Well, if you've got an overflowing amount of it, here's what that tells you. Someone else needs what you have. You've got too much for yourself. And that's okay. Like, it's a great, I've been there. It's a great place to be. But that means let it spill out and spill over into the life of someone else rather than just wasting it on yourself. People formed by the gospel recognize that none of us is sufficient by ourselves to deal with the things that we deal with in this life. None of us is sufficient to deal with these things by ourselves. And at certain moments, certain times in our lives, you're going to be both the giver and the receiver of comfort and strength from one another. Because that's the way that God has designed the church. I'm going to do something today that we don't always do. And it might take some courage from us today. I know, and I say this not because I have like some prophetic insight. I know that sitting inside of this room today, there are people who feel like life is too much. You are feeling the weight of that. You walked in and you smiled at people and you shook hands and we did the 3 minutes of greeting and you put on the church face. But you know inside that you are struggling with something that feels like it's too much for you. And again, I don't have to be a prophet to say that. I'm just a student of human behavior. I've just pastored people long enough to know that some of us came into the room and we're just going through it. And so what I'm going to ask you to do this morning is I'm going to ask you, and you don't have to share what it is. You don't have to say anything about it. All I'm going to ask you to do is just raise your hand. I know this is so vulnerable. Like this is like we never do this. So don't think that this is an every week thing. It's so vulnerable to do this. But what I want you to do is I want you to just put up your hand. And if you're not putting up your hand, I want you to look around and I want you to find somebody who has their hand up. And then I just want you to go sit next to them. I just want you to go sit next to them. And if they ask you to pray for something, I want you to go ahead and pray for something. And you'll be like, well, I can't do that. I don't know how to pray. Then just say, Jesus, comfort. Jesus, give strength. That's all you have to say. And if something else comes to you, something else comes to you. So this morning, I'm gonna take that risk. And if nobody raises their hand, that's fine. But I would prefer that we don't lie to each other. If you've got something that you feel like is just too much for you, go ahead and raise your hand, and we're going to look around. It's okay. All right. We got some people. All right. Just keep it up. It's okay. It's okay. If you are not raising your hand, I just want you to go, and I want you to find that person, and I want you to sit next to them. All right? We're going to do it. We're not just going to talk about it.